Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. My name is Allison Crank, and I'm a UX designer and researcher. And I'm here to talk to you a bit about a research course I led this past summer for the AA Visiting School in Melbourne. This is an architecture program with architecture bachelor and master students at the University of Melbourne. And it was a course I taught together with Raphael Panassa. Um, and originally we were supposed to go in person to Australia to teach, but because of COVID and the lockdown situation, the whole course and program turned online. And as a result, we saw this would be an interesting opportunity also to explore a concept that deals with the online worlds, online architecture, online spaces. And I think if we think about it, this is an illustration I made during COVID, but we find that in the beginning, everyone was probably calling online, having family chats at night, drinks with friends. I had one friend that would call me during lunch just so he could eat with somebody and have just to talk. But as time went on, there wasn't so much to talk. So we were kind of staring at each other, talking about, of course, the situation in the world or whatever. But it was really lacking some things to encourage engagement and interaction. In particular, what works so well for public spaces. So Ray Oldenburg is an architectural historian who has coined the term the third place, which is the idea that for any society to live and thrive, there needs to be three places for people to go. One is work, one is home, and the third is the third place. And that is a public space, a place for people to meet. And these places are like malls, stores, plazas, bars, cafes, and they're an important part of society because that's where culture happens. That's where people gather. That's where revolutions start. And during COVID, we kind of had them all merged into one. And so you saw people also then afterwards trying to find and recreate the space online through the Zoom meetings. And the same thing happened with conferences and events. We're meeting online in these virtual spaces. But the architecture and design of these spaces, we found a lot of times was just a direct translation of the physical, which kind of falls flat in the virtual form because it doesn't work the same way as the physical world does. And at the same time, these kinds of portals that we see each other don't encourage different types of interaction. As you know, people going to different events have different intentions of what they want to achieve from it. So maybe someone's going just to network, another person is going to learn, another person might be going just for inspiration. But we're all kind of given the same interaction and tools, whereas in a real space, you can kind of choose how much you're engaged or what you do and how you spend your time. So this research kind of started as, okay, well, we've now this new place called the fourth place, which is what is the future of these online social spaces? And we were looking specifically at lobby spaces, places for people to meet online, and how we can use architecture, virtual architecture, as a way to encourage people to have an engaging time with the members of the public or even members of their own friends or family. And what we can do with these spaces to make them different from the physical world, but also still bring some real values. The course was divided into 2 points. The first part was of research that we were looking and mapping and analyzing waiting in lobby spaces in reality, and then of design and production. So they found different contexts that they would actually try to build a virtual environment for, which I'll show you at the end. So in the beginning, we had the students kind of work from their own experience. I think that's always the best when people are starting from what they know. And so we asked them to map and analyze the spaces and places where they had one really great experience and one really bad experience. And the key thing was that it had to be something to do with waiting as well, and in a public space. So for example, this one student had a really bad experience with this skyscraper and a really good experience at an airport. And he found pain points along the way and tried to understand, okay, what was the user movement? You can see how he mapped, how he circulated in the space, all the opportunities that could have been, there could be a design solution or intervention. and things that could have been improved and things that were working. And so all the students did this kind of research to understand, well, what are the elements? What are the building blocks of lobby areas, of waiting areas, not just in terms of architecture, but also in terms of program, in terms of activities. And then we also had them map physical lobbies, spaces that were meant for people to meet and to wait. So one student was looking at Starbucks, and what Starbucks does really well is the dating place for teenagers, and the different types of users that will go in and use the space, and how they design, whether it's in terms of the architecture or the chairs, or how the seating is arranged for these different types of people to satisfy them. I think that's also an important thing, because in our virtual formats, as I mentioned before, when we all have different viewpoints, it's very difficult to satisfy everybody with the same activity, because it's very limited in terms of interactions. And another student also looked a little bit at a ride, and actually the waiting area of going on to a theme park could actually be designed in itself as a theme park, or as a ride, as a maze, essentially. And so all the different things that could make it better, and to push the idea of user engagement, play, and to also, at the core of it, really encourage people to speak and to talk to one another. So creating context. Another student looked also as well at the terms of architecture. So viewpoints, visibility, materiality, using light, how to use light to help push people to circulate in space. And this was pulling from a real theater space that he mapped in Melbourne. Another one, again, looking at the trajectory of the timeline, really, of all the steps before he went to see a film at this one theater that he really liked. And, what are the different areas that users will go through beforehand. We also had students looking at online spaces and mapping virtual lobby areas, because we also wanted them to see, okay, well, what kind of interactions are out there? How are games working with this? I mean, Fortnite is a really great example, or Animal Crossing as a social platform. What are the different elements from the onboarding to the actual play part? So this one student was looking at Rec Room and realizing that the mirror was a really important part of the user journey. Another student looking at Minecraft and the different areas of the lobby space, which encourages different types of interactions, from mini games to making friends in one area, to being able to travel more efficiently, and entries and exits, as well as some other examples, as you see on the right. So this was actually me teaching. I was using my Quest headset, and my students were on their desktops. None of them had VR headsets, actually. So we used, in the end, Hubs, which is an online platform for multiplayer, kind of like a lobby, essentially, where people can meet and be in a virtual world, and it goes across platforms. So it was a really easy tool for students to, start prototyping and building and understanding the logic of it all, without having the hardware. And what was also interesting was here, I just took them to Tiki Island to show them some of the interactions. But I think, yeah, you can see to the left, someone definitely drew a dick in the space, because that will always happen in a virtual setting. But we were also playing with physicality. So at one point, which was super memorable, is like I was on the ground and the students were looking down on me. And I had this kind of really weird body feeling in the space because of the virtual format. So again, they were in Melbourne and I was in Europe, and we were meeting at a Tiki Island to discuss. And so now I'm just going to quickly go through some of the outcomes that the students did, the different projects. They all explored different realms that make sense to have a virtual format. One is in terms of museums, another one's a film festival, another one is to do with student life, and another one is recreating something on campus, which is the student center for the architecture students. And the last one is actually a game. And I'm just going to go through and show you a little bit of the outcomes and the research that they did for this design intervention. Again, they made these spaces in 1 week, so it's not necessarily a question of whether or not they're working, but I think it's interesting to see some of the things that they played with to make it better. So this is actually a website that I made for the students to show the work. And if any of you guys are interested, you can look at aavs.tigertiger.io. to see what the research was done. In the end, actually, we're making this into a book in terms of the research that the students led at the beginning and also some of their outcomes. And our hope is to use it kind of as a design toolkit. So in the future, when we create more of these fourth places, whether that might be for a festival, conference, or event, we have a solid tool set essentially of what to work with and how to use the spaces and build the spaces to ensure that they're engaging for users. So if we look down here, we have the outcomes. That was the research above. And I'm just going to read through them quickly. The first one, the quad, was actually about the student orientation on campus life, because the two students were from different countries, from Australia, and they came in. So the first one's called the Quad, and it's about campus life and orientation week, because orientation week is a super important part of the college experience, but because of COVID and lockdown, they lost this. So they were seeing, how can we use the virtual realm as a way to encourage community life, campus spirit, essentially, but also allowing students to use the benefits of virtual things. For example, there was a Facebook group where you can buy secondhand books for studies, or or another group online that you could buy secondhand furniture for new students moving in. So it was also combining some of these virtual things that are happening with also the physical things, which on orientation week would include a little bit of, putting first years through some embarrassing moments, but also to meet the different sports groups and recreational groups. So feel free to come and take a look. I think the key takeaways that you can see here is that they were playing with the idea of gravity as one of the core things. They thought it'd be interesting to create this kind of quad, because the campus quad is a common term, and play with it so that each of these different areas focuses on a different program, whether it's culture, sports, marketplace related, or even community related. And breaking down that space to have also different elements inside, including Easter eggs from the campus. And lastly, of course, the avatar. This is playing with the Melbourne University students who would be naked with a box around them. So using this as also an opportunity to kind of encourage students to play with their own avatar and to also show themselves a little bit. Another project, MSD Reimagined, is also dealing with Melbourne University. It has to do with the architecture school. This is the building where all the architecture students go. And because these students were now working from home, they saw that the real benefits of this building is actually not just because there's courses there, but it's because as an architecture student, you work crazy hours and you spend a lot of time in that space. And so they kind of extracted the elements of, what it is, and this, like some key features in terms of this hanging studio is a big one. And some elements like the vending machine, which was a joke on campus. And converting it into this kind of space that allows for different types of programs that are needed, and what kind of core values. And the interesting thing they thought that they could push with this space, as opposed to the one in reality, is that, in reality, the students from different years wouldn't really intersect. You have your course in your year and you just don't know anybody else in the building. And they wanted to encourage students to actually have some cross dialogue. And so they created one area, this vending machine area, where for an exchange of a Deliveroo of pizza or whatever, you can critique another student's work and give them advice, or even help them on a project when they need an extra hand for 3D modeling or whatever. And this was a way also to encourage cross years to interact with each other. Again, you can try it on hubs. And you can see as well some of the things that they looked at in terms of circulation, in terms of the elements that they extracted, and how it works together. Sum it up by saying thank you, everybody, for being here and for listening to me speak. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.